Jacob Hartman, a 38-year-old corporate lawyer from Denver, had always considered himself a fortunate man. He had built a stable life with his wife, Emily, and their two children, Lily and Max. Emily, at 36, was a talented interior designer with an effortless charm that drew people to her. Their children, Lily and Max, were aged 10 and 8, respectively. They were bright and well-behaved, excelling in school, and involved in various extracurricular activities. Jacob had always felt a sense of accomplishment when he looked at his family. His career was thriving, and he enjoyed a comfortable home in a desirable neighborhood. Their family life, though not without its usual strains, seemed to be anchored in love and mutual respect. He often marveled at how lucky he was to have such a supportive and loving family. Daniel Hartman, Jacob's 40-year-old older brother, had always been a bit of a drifter. Unlike Jacob, who had meticulously built his life, Daniel struggled with stability. He had been a frequent guest at Jacob's home over the years, often popping in for short visits that extended longer than anticipated. Despite his flaws, Daniel was a charismatic figure who could charm his way into people's hearts, including Emily's. The relationship between Jacob and Daniel was complex. They had shared a close bond growing up, but their paths had diverged significantly in adulthood. Jacob's path had led him to financial success and a family of his own, while Daniel's life had been marked by a series of failed ventures and personal struggles. Despite this, Jacob had always felt a sense of responsibility toward his brother, often providing him with financial help and a place to stay when needed. The peculiar dynamics within the Hartman family began to surface more prominently when Jacob noticed how frequently his children were spending time at Daniel's house. At first, he thought it was simply because Daniel had a more relaxed and playful approach to life, a stark contrast to his own structured and disciplined approach. The children naturally would find the less regimented environment appealing. However, Jacob's curiosity grew when the frequency of these visits increased. It was unusual for Lily and Max to be away from home so often, especially on weekends when they had family plans. Emily's constant assurances that it was nothing out of the ordinary did little to quell Jacob's growing unease. He found himself questioning whether he was being overly suspicious or if there was something more sinister at play. One evening, Jacob's life took a dramatic turn. He had come home early from work, planning to surprise Emily and the kids with a special dinner. As he entered the kitchen, he heard Emily's voice through the slightly ajar door leading to the adjacent study. At first, he thought nothing of it, assuming she was on the phone, but when he heard Daniel's voice as well, curiosity got the better of him. Jacob eased the door open, his heart pounding as he tried to make sense of the conversation he was inadvertently overhearing. Emily's tone was laden with an unsettling mix of affection and conspiracy. "When will we tell him that you're the real father of my kids?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel's response was equally shocking. "Never. I don't have the money to pay for their college," he replied, his voice betraying a hint of exasperation. The words struck Jacob like a thunderbolt. He felt as if the ground had been ripped out from under him. He staggered back, barely managing to steady himself against the wall. The realization hit him with a brutal force. The man he had trusted, his brother, was not just an unwelcome guest in his home but had been intimately involved in the most personal aspect of his life. The revelation was too much to absorb in a single moment. Jacob stumbled out of the kitchen and sat down heavily on the couch, trying to piece together what he had just heard. The pieces of his life, his family, his marriage, and his trust seemed to be dissolving before his eyes. He had always wondered why his children seemed to have an unspoken bond with Daniel, but he had never suspected that the bond was more than familial. Determined to uncover the truth, Jacob knew he had to take action. He couldn't rely on mere suspicions or eavesdropped conversations. The next morning, he hired a private detective, Marcus Reed, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for uncovering the darkest secrets. Jacob provided Marcus with a brief outline of his concerns and the troubling conversation he had overheard. Marcus was methodical in his approach, starting with a thorough background check on Daniel and Emily. Jacob's heart sank further as Marcus revealed troubling inconsistencies in Emily's accounts of her activities and Daniel's financial records. The detective promised to dig deeper, assuring Jacob that he would uncover the full extent of the deception. Days turned into a week, and the tension in Jacob's home was palpable. He was walking on a razor's edge, constantly on guard but unable to confront Emily or Daniel until he had solid evidence. The unease was compounded by the nagging feeling that there was more to discover, something that might endanger his children. Finally, Marcus's findings arrived. The detective had managed to hack into Daniel's personal computer, a move that revealed a horrifying truth. The computer held a series of videos that were damning beyond imagination. These videos depicted not only the affair between Emily and Daniel, but also their discussions about keeping up the pretense for financial gain. The most disturbing footage included Daniel's threats and manipulative tactics to control Emily and Jacob's family life. Jacob's hands trembled as he reviewed the evidence Marcus had compiled. It was clear that Daniel's deceit was not only about an affair, but involved a deeper and more dangerous manipulation. The videos included plans that hinted at a potentially violent outcome if Daniel's schemes were ever uncovered. Jacob knew he had to act swiftly to protect his children from any potential harm. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Jacob decided to escalate the matter. He contacted the FBI, sharing the incriminating evidence and expressing his concerns about the safety of his family. The FBI's response was prompt. They launched an immediate investigation and arrested Daniel, beginning a thorough inquiry into his activities. The arrest was a media sensation, with Jacob's story spreading rapidly across news outlets. The shock and outrage at the betrayal were echoed in the public's response, but for Jacob, the real challenge lay ahead. He had to navigate the aftermath of the betrayal while ensuring that Lily and Max were shielded from the fallout. As Jacob stood in the doorway of his home, watching the FBI agents lead Daniel away, he felt a mix of relief and sorrow. The betrayal had ripped his life apart, but he was determined to rebuild and protect his children from the wreckage of deceit that had threatened to consume them all. The first chapter of Jacob's ordeal had concluded, but the path ahead was uncertain. He knew that he faced an arduous journey of healing and rebuilding trust, both within his family and within himself. The discovery had set in motion a series of events that would test his resolve and redefine his understanding of family and loyalty. Jacob Hartman paced the length of his study, the room dimly lit by the soft glow of the desk lamp. He was still reeling from the confrontation he had witnessed, Emily and Daniel's hidden truth, exposed through Marcus Reed's investigation. The weight of the betrayal was suffocating, and Jacob struggled to grasp the enormity of what he had discovered. His mind raced, consumed by thoughts of the children, Emily, and the man he once called his brother. The days following the initial discovery were a blur. Marcus Reed, a private detective with a reputation for tenacity, had worked quickly. His findings were both shocking and horrifying, and Jacob had to confront the reality of this situation head-on. Marcus had managed to extract incriminating evidence from Daniel's computer, revealing a disturbing pattern of deceit and manipulation. The detective had informed Jacob of the gravity of the evidence before handing over the files. Jacob, Marcus had said, his voice steady but serious, "What I found is more than just an affair. Daniel's actions go beyond personal betrayal. He has been plotting and manipulating in ways that could endanger your family." Jacob had taken the files with a trembling hand, trying to steady his breath. The videos Marcus had uncovered were a dark testament to Daniel's duplicity. They were stored in a hidden folder, meticulously organized. Each file was a piece of a sinister puzzle that Daniel had crafted over the years. As Jacob reviewed the footage, his stomach churned with revulsion. The first video showed Daniel and Emily in a clandestine meeting. Their conversation was candid, almost casual, about how they had maintained the illusion of Jacob's fatherhood for so long. Emily's voice was laced with a disturbing mixture of affection and calculated coldness. She spoke about their plans for the future, outlining how they would continue to deceive Jacob, especially as the children grew older. In another video, Daniel was seen at a computer, drafting threatening messages that suggested he had no qualms about resorting to drastic measures to protect his secrets. He spoke about his financial struggles, his resentment toward Jacob's success, and his plans to manipulate Emily further if she ever wavered. The most unsettling video, however, was a recording of Daniel discussing his backup plan if their deceit was ever exposed. The conversation hinted at potential violence, with Daniel's threats underscoring his willingness to go to great lengths to maintain his control. Jacob felt a chill as he realized how close he had come to being completely unaware of the danger that had been lurking. The weight of the discovery was unbearable, but Jacob knew he had to act decisively. With Marcus's guidance, he reached out to the FBI, providing them with the incriminating evidence. The federal agents were prompt and efficient. They conducted a thorough investigation and swiftly arrested Daniel, charging him with multiple offenses, including fraud, extortion, and conspiracy. Jacob's home, once a sanctuary of family warmth, had become a battleground of emotional conflict. He had to navigate the treacherous waters of confronting Emily, who was now under intense scrutiny. The realization that the woman he had loved and trusted had been complicit in such a cruel deception was almost too much to bear. Emily was home when the FBI agents arrived to arrest Daniel. Jacob watched from the sidelines, his heart heavy as the agents conducted their search and questioned Emily. She was distraught, her facade of composure crumbling under the weight of the situation. Jacob's emotions were a tangled mess of anger, sadness, and disbelief as he witnessed the unraveling of the life he thought he understood. Emily's reaction was a mixture of defensiveness and desperation. She tried to downplay the severity of the situation, offering explanations that only further illustrated the depth of her deceit. "Jacob, I didn't want this to happen," she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "It was supposed to be a secret to protect the kids. I never meant for it to go this far." Jacob struggled to maintain his composure as he faced Emily. He had always believed in open communication and honesty, yet here was the person he had trusted most, caught in a web of lies. He felt a profound sense of betrayal, not just from Emily but from Daniel as well. The man he had tried to help, the brother he had given second chances, had used that trust against him in the most damaging way. The media frenzy that followed the arrest was overwhelming. The story of Jacob's ordeal became a sensation, with news outlets covering every detail of the scandal. Jacob was thrust into the spotlight, his private pain exposed for public consumption. The coverage ranged from sympathetic to sensational, with each report adding a layer of scrutiny to an already tumultuous situation. As the legal proceedings against Daniel progressed, Jacob found himself grappling with the aftermath. He had to make decisions about his family's future, including how to protect Lily and Max from the fallout. The children, who had always been the joy of his life, were now caught in the crossfire of a scandal that had shattered their world. Jacob sought therapy to help him navigate the emotional turmoil. He knew that he needed to be strong for his children, but the weight of the betrayal and the public scrutiny were taking their toll. He worked closely with child psychologists to ensure that Lily and Max received the support they needed to cope with the changes in their lives. The legal process was grueling. Daniel's trial revealed more about his schemes and manipulations. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and the court proceedings served as a painful reminder of the depth of the betrayal. Jacob attended the trial, driven by a need for closure and justice. Each day in court was a struggle, but he remained resolute in his pursuit of accountability for the damage that had been done. Emily, facing her own legal challenges, was also a central figure in the proceedings. Her role in the deception and her attempts to justify her actions were scrutinized in court. The emotional strain on Jacob was immense, but he continued to focus on his children, determined to shield them from the worst of the fallout. Despite the chaos, Jacob found moments of clarity. He realized that his primary responsibility was to his children. They were his source of strength, and he was committed to providing them with a stable and loving environment amidst the turmoil. He made efforts to create normalcy in their lives, maintaining their routines and reassuring them that they were loved and protected. The chapter of Jacob's life, marked by betrayal and revelation, was one of the most challenging periods he had ever faced. The pain of discovering the truth about Emily and Daniel, combined with the public scrutiny and legal battles, was overwhelming. Yet through it all, Jacob remained focused on the future. He knew that healing would be a long and difficult journey, but he was determined to navigate it with resilience and integrity. As the chapter drew to a close, Jacob stood at the threshold of a new beginning. The road ahead was uncertain, but he was committed to rebuilding his life and ensuring that Lily and Max could thrive despite the scars of the past. The revelation had been a devastating blow, but Jacob was resolved to emerge from the darkness with strength and clarity, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Jacob Hartman stood at the edge of a precipice, peering into the abyss that had opened up in his life. The arrest of Daniel and the legal battles that followed had left him exhausted, but the most daunting task lay ahead, confronting Emily about the full extent of the betrayal and deciding the future of their fractured family. The trial of Daniel Hartman was a media circus. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, and the courtroom was packed with spectators eager for the latest developments. Jacob attended each day, his heart heavy with the burden of witnessing his brother's downfall and Emily's attempts to justify her actions. The court proceedings were relentless, exposing every sordid detail of the affair and the deceit that had plagued his family for years. Emily's defense was a desperate attempt to shift the blame and minimize her culpability. Her lawyers argued that she had been coerced by Daniel, portraying her as a victim trapped in a web of manipulation, but Jacob knew better. He had witnessed Emily's cold calculations and her willingness to participate in the deceit for her own benefit. The evidence presented in court painted a damning picture of her role in the conspiracy. The confrontation with Emily was inevitable. One evening, after the courtroom had emptied and the frenzy of the day had subsided, Jacob and Emily found themselves alone in their now foreign home. The silence between them was heavy, the air thick with unspoken words and shattered trust. Jacob's thoughts raced as he prepared to face Emily, knowing that their conversation would determine the future of their relationship. Emily was sitting at the dining table, her face pale and drawn. She looked up as Jacob entered, her eyes filled with a mixture of regret and defiance. "Jacob," she began, her voice faltering, "I know there's so much we need to talk about. I'm sorry for everything that's happened. I never wanted it to come to this." Jacob took a deep breath, trying to steady his emotions. "Emily, I don't even know where to begin. I've seen the evidence and I've heard the testimonies. What we had, it's all been a lie." Emily's tears began to flow, and she reached out for Jacob's hand, but he pulled away. "Jacob, please. I made mistakes, but it wasn't all for nothing. I thought I was protecting our family, that maybe if we kept up the pretense, we could avoid the mess Daniel was making." Jacob shook his head, struggling to contain his anger. "You weren't protecting our family, Emily. You were deceiving me. You allowed Daniel to manipulate us all, and you were complicit in every part of it. How could you?" Emily's voice was barely above a whisper. "I was afraid, Jacob, afraid of losing everything. Daniel convinced me that we needed to keep up the act to protect the kids, and I believed him. I thought I was doing the right thing." The conversation spiraled into a heated argument, filled with accusations and desperate justifications. Jacob's emotions were a tempest of rage, sorrow, and disbelief. He had once loved Emily with a depth that had made her betrayal all the more devastating. The woman he had trusted implicitly had used that trust to inflict the deepest possible wound. As the confrontation continued, Jacob's resolve hardened. He knew that their marriage could not survive this level of deceit and betrayal. "Emily, this is beyond repair. I can't continue living a lie. Our family, our lives, everything has been tainted by this deception. I need to move on for my own sake and for the sake of the kids." Emily's pleas grew more desperate. "Jacob, please, we can work through this. We can find a way to fix things. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make it right." But Jacob's decision was final. He had seen the full extent of Emily's duplicity and was determined to start anew. The marriage was irreparably broken, and he needed to focus on creating a stable environment for Lily and Max. Their well-being was his priority, and he could not afford to be mired in the ruins of a relationship built on lies. In the weeks that followed, Jacob and Emily began the difficult process of separation. The legalities were a challenge, but they approached the situation with a focus on minimizing the impact on their children. Jacob sought to ensure that Lily and Max would have a stable and supportive environment as they adjusted to the changes in their lives. The media's interest in the scandal eventually waned, but the emotional scars remained. Jacob worked with child psychologists to help Lily and Max navigate their feelings of confusion and betrayal. He made an effort to maintain their routines and provide them with a sense of normalcy amidst the upheaval. As Jacob began to rebuild his life, he found solace in the support of friends and family who rallied around him. They offered empathy and practical assistance, helping him navigate the complexities of single parenthood and the emotional aftermath of the betrayal. Jacob's focus remained on providing a loving and supportive home for his children, despite the challenges he faced. The legal proceedings against Daniel continued, with the court imposing a significant sentence for his crimes. The verdict provided a measure of justice, but it did little to erase the pain of the betrayal. Jacob found himself grappling with the lingering effects of the scandal, trying to find a new path forward. Through the turbulence of the past year, Jacob discovered a renewed sense of purpose. He poured his energy into his career and embraced opportunities for personal growth. The experience had tested his resilience and revealed the depths of his strength. he began to rediscover his passions and interests outside of the shadow of this former life. In the end, Jacob emerged from the darkness with a renewed sense of clarity and determination. The betrayal had been a devastating blow, but it had also catalyzed a transformation. He had faced the pain, navigated the fallout, and emerged stronger for it. His love for Lily and Max remained unwavering, and he was committed to ensuring that they had a bright and hopeful future. The chapter of Jacob's life marked by deception and betrayal had closed, but the journey of healing and rebuilding was just beginning. He faced the future with a sense of optimism and strength, ready to embrace the possibilities that lay ahead. The scars of the past would always be a part of him, but they had forged a new resolve and a deeper understanding of himself and his priorities. As Jacob looked forward to the future, he knew that the road ahead would have its challenges, but he was ready to face them with courage and resilience, determined to create a life of authenticity and love for himself and his children. The story of betrayal and revelation had been a harsh lesson, but it had also been a catalyst for growth and transformation. Jacob was ready to embrace the next chapter of his life, hopeful and resolute in the face of whatever came next.